so when you're going back in your, system with an IFS therapist, perhaps, and looking at it, connecting with it, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like, oh my gosh, they're 14, for instance, right? This is a 14-year-old part. So again, that 14-year-old doesn't know who your wife is. The 14-year-old, they don't even often know who we are. They're just reacting to what feels familiar based on what they lived.
Candice, this is such an interesting podcast that we're going to do, because I'm going to do two things that are weird. One, I'm actually going to have you talk about you and what you do, which I actually don't do often. What would you call it? I mean, so the listeners can understand, like, how would you articulate what you do for addicts?
So we have in Utah a neuro-inclusive healing center for various neurotypes where we weave in internal family systems. And I just got trained the IFIO, which is IFS for couple therapy training. And it was incredible. And so, I would say that we look at people's hardware. So their neurotype, whether they have a traumatized system, everybody does, by the way, a betrayal trauma, or they have a neurotype, let's say, that is autistic, ADHD, or even have like obsessive compulsive. So we're looking at the hardware, but then we are weaving in the software, which are parts within someone's system. And we're looking at problematic sex addiction, porn addiction, infidelity, etc., through that lens of like a system of parts, wounded parts that will activate protectors that cope in ways that are outdated. And so in our work with clients, looking at it through that lens, it's actually a really gentle, disarming model, very gentle and disarming. Because as you probably know, you and I spoke before we came on, people, when you're in addiction, there are pretty fierce protectors. If we say, like you had said, ego, oh yeah, right? That when we feel shameful, we do shameless things sometimes. And those are those parts that do shameless things. Oftentimes when we get underneath it, we find that they're protecting some sweet little wounded parts that feel a lot of shame. So that's what we do. And yeah, I mean, I love it.
It's the way, and so everybody listening, in case you're unfamiliar with internal family systems, I'm going to take a couple different stabs at like explaining this to the listeners who are unfamiliar. I know a lot of you guys listening are familiar, but there's a few of you who aren't. So when we say parts, it's just a way of us trying to help clients separate from their brain patterns and processes enough to be able to work on them. When we're too close to them or we think they're us, it can be a massive block. It's not fun to be a sex addict. It's way easier to work on it when I have neuropathways, patterns of protecting myself that I rely on to get what I want. So I'm gonna articulate this for the listeners, and then Candice, if I misspeak or I'm inaccurate, please correct me. The way we really look at parts in our program when we're trying to, like, because we do this a lot when the guys are masterminding, they're all kind of presenting their pathways to each other and having these collaborative discussions around what is this? Do I do this? How do we change? It's this mastermindy format. But so everybody listening, here's how I would kind of help you wrap your head around a part. So I'm going to use a personal example. So I felt unseen as a boy. I felt unappreciated as a boy because I was brought up in a religious place where all they wanted me to do was the religious things that they wanted. And if I didn't do those, they didn't really see me as a human. And that really bothered me because I am part of my just DNA was to be seen. So I invented a version of myself that could be seen. So I, again, when as a boy, I dyed my hair, I got an earring, I wear ridiculous baggy clothes to get attention, right? Well, then I grew out of that. And then eventually it turned into skateboarding and then snowboarding. And then and then it was scholastic, and then it was bodybuilding. And then finally, as an adult, it became money and trying to convince attractive women to sleep with me, right? And unfortunately, I didn't grow out of that. And as much as I thought I would stop when I got married, I didn't. So my point of just kind of helping the audience understand a part one could say Roland did those things. The challenge is it's very difficult to work on Roland when Roland also does a lot of really beautiful things. So what I found beneficial to my own recovery from parts work, internal family systems work, was when that was a part of me that he just did that to get attention. That's one part to solve a need. But then over here, I'm doing other great things. I'm helping my grandmother. I'm spending quality time with, right? So I'm not a bad person, but when I need attention, I've developed a part that gets attention sexually was my go-to method, money and sex, right? So, it is that, as I'm trying to dumb this down to the population so they can understand what a part is, we're really trying to find a constructive way for you to chase down a brain pattern and work with it. And it's way easier if we get to know this brain pattern as if it was a person rather than just a brain pattern. Because I mean, as a brain pattern alone, it's hard to change, Candice, but if it's a person who thinks things and has desires and has fears, now we can actually start to appreciate what it's like to be that individual, if that was entirely you. Now we know it's not us all the time, but it's a part of us. Candice, how did I do explaining that to people who are unfamiliar?
I think you did pretty well. I mean, I think one of the things I'll say is that you described a system of parts. And, like you said, little boy. So there's this, what we would call an exile part. We don't actually talk about IFS when we're doing IFS, and I can use some language so you can get a feel for it today. But so you have this exile part that activates this image manager part, which it starts out by bodybuilding, et cetera, which of course it would. That makes so much sense to me. And then when that didn't work, right, then this...
I had to, so the audience understands, I had to start using steroids because I've turned 20. And so I was like, well, I don't really want to use drugs. So then I had to pivot.
Yeah. And so what I'm also hearing, I wonder, I guess I get curious about your system, is perhaps there was another fierce protector that came forward that was like, let's do more, right? Like, this isn't enough. So, you're trying to kind of manage this by using steroids, but how about using money and sex, right? And so you can see kind of the system of parts, which ultimately they're trying to protect the wounding that happens, really. I mean, really, that is what it is. And it's not like a model that excuses any behavior by any means. But what I love that you said is that it allows a little bit of separation, because there is a Roland, there's a self, there is you, right? And there are these parts of you that often all of us get frozen in time with their wounding. We can call it arrested development is one way that a theory, but frozen in time as well as parts. And so in my own therapy, I literally just did this today with my therapist. I connected with, an angry part, a part that was feeling angry towards my dad. And when I got down to it, I ended up connecting with a really little wounded girl that just wanted to be seen and just wanted to be loved, right? And so in that moment, I was able, when my angry part just kind of stepped aside, I was able to really connect and let that part feel me here, me. And it was really beautiful. It was like some beautiful healing work can happen when we go that route instead of, I think, kind of the shaming approach, right? A lot of times therapists unintentionally have manager parts that step in to do therapy with their clients who have addiction. And that does not work. All it does is it speaks to your shame in your system. Right.
Well, and I think this is the challenge that I had, especially when I got into this space, was, and I don't know if it's intentional, but I mean, Candice, it's no mystery. Like, this is there's a good Christian, just religious kind of presence in this space, and it's a beautiful thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think they're very offended by how casual some of these really things have been happening. And so the religious communities are speaking up more. And I think that's great, because we need people to be more vocal. But I think the thing that was really tough for me was when we have like ideals and standards and these measures, it made me feel very judged. And so the thing I love about parts work is, let's judge that part all day long. I mean, he does do these things, and society does not like those. And is that Roland though? Like, do I always do that? like, and the chances are, no, of course not. That's why your wife, you know, for those of you who are married, it's why your wife stayed, is she knows that that's not you. And that's why she's open to you living a life without that. But I think you said one other thing that I loved, which was, and people, this is also often overlooked too, is these parts, you know, you'll hear your therapist say, hey, these parts are here to help you. Therapists will say that, right? And I think the way that I look at it, because that sounds really confusing, like, how are they helping me? Because they're like ruining my life right now. I think the way that I better understood it finally was, and you said this like at a young age, like a lot of guys are wondering, like, why do I keep doing this to my wife? Like it's just like, it's disgusting, it's embarrassing, it's humiliating. Here's the thing though that I started realizing was, when did I latch on to all these? When do I latch on to all of this? When did I latch on to, when did I start viewing pornography? When did I start flirting and not thinking with, like, when did I start conquesting after women and trying to get them to sleep with me? Like, when did all this happen? I was not married. So here we are, fast forward, I'm married now. These parts don't know, they don't care what monogamy is. They're like, hey, when are we going to go back to that one thing that we really love to do? And so a lot of people are like, I think the thing that Candice, that was hard for me is like, these parts are like me. So I really had this hard understanding, like, how could they sabotage my life? But it's, if you think about it, then, so, okay, we're calling them parts. Let's go back to like neurons and brain patterns. That's really what a part is. It's just this network of strategies, right? And if we think about it, if you developed that network of strategy when you were single and you liked it and it worked really well, you can see how now as a married man, it would be like, I feel this feeling, I want to not feel this. You can see how you could say, oh, I remember that one strategy. And then you literally opt into that strategy that was developed when you were a single person. And that was really how I started understanding that, like, oh, okay, now I get it. Because it was hard. I liked parts work, but I had a hard time understanding, like, biologically and scientifically, like, what's actually going on. And that was when I finally realized, like, oh, I get it. We can call them my part, but really it's this pattern that was invented that does not really care about monogamy. It cares about my pleasure. And so when I decide, hey, I'm going to use that, I unknowingly am adopting a belief system, essentially a pathway that's like, we don't care about monogamy right now because we're just trying to solve this one problem. And that was how I started really unmapping why I did so many ugly things, right?
Yeah. And you're saying a lot, and it's really important. And I mean, what I'm hearing when I connect with people with parts, or I connect with my own parts, if we shove these fierce protectors, oftentimes, that are, you know, acting out sexually, for instance, in the naughty room, as we call it, they're going to come out because they also need to be witnessed. So we do a lot. It's a very slow process. Slower is faster with IFS, and then IFIO, which is the couple therapy part of IFS. Slower is faster. And we do a lot of, you know, where do you feel this part of you in your body? Because a lot of people can feel that. You know, and so then as you connect, is it aware of you? How are you feeling towards it? Just to see if you, Roland, can be here with that part, separate from feeling what we say blended from the part, right? And then when you are, we will ask questions of the part, or you know, what is this part hoping to do for you by seeking sex from women, right? And what is this part afraid will happen if it's not? If it's not doing that. But it's a real gentle model, and it's very slow. There's not a rush to it. And ultimately it's about connecting with those younger parts, because my guess is, for you, Roland, I would not be surprised if this part of you developed as a teenager. So when you're going back in your, you know, system with an IFS therapist, perhaps, and looking at it, connecting with it, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like, oh my gosh, they're 14, for instance, right? This is the 14-year-old part. So again, that 14-year-old doesn't know who your wife is. The 14-year-old, they don't even often know who we are. They're just reacting to what feels familiar based on what they lived. So when we give them an update that, wow, I'm here now, 2025. I'm this age. It's been 20 years, whatever. And then parts often go, oh, and this is my wife. This isn't my mom. This isn't my dad. Oh, right. And then we can do some really beautiful healing work, which the next step would be, can we explore those parts that this really fierce protector has been protecting, right? Which is often like so many parts. Shame it's an action word. It's a verb. It's not a noun. So it's like parts will hold shame oftentimes, and that's who these protectors are protecting. So that would be an example of how I explain it. And what we also know is so many people's neurotypes, there is not a normal neurotype. There just isn't anymore, especially after COVID. So many people's neurotype is really comes in and just is emotionally feeling a lot of big feelings, sometimes fight or flight, right? Sometimes, oh my God, I want to get out of the therapy room. Or sometimes I want to shut down, numb out, check out, die. We have to educate. And this is one of the things that we do. When you were saying clients love it, right? What we do is we educate them on what's going on in your autonomic nervous system and how can we teach you what is your window of tolerance so that you can actually feel calm enough to connect and stay present to what's happening with your hearts.
It's the thing that as I'm thinking this, you know, what's interesting about my population, the successful, people know this, right? Successful men are shapeshifters. It's largely the reason that they're able to become so successful is probably their biggest skill set is becoming whatever they need to become for the person in front of them. And they're very good at it. It's the reason why they make a lot of money is they know how to get the person across from them to give them their money. The challenge that I have found is, for a lot of high achievers, they learned that this was a skill early. They learned that it was an advantageous skill early. And I have found these guys, oh my gosh, Candice, they will have so many parts that they have developed for so many situations that oftentimes they either didn't spend much time being them. And so they don't really know, like they have these parts that they really, really like. I mean, that's what happened to me. I mean, my real me was shy. I'm a highly sensitive boy. I cried. I had to quit karate because it was too loud. I wanted to be a firefighter, but the sirens were too loud. And so I hated me. And so I became this other person and everyone liked him. And then I became another one and they liked Roland 3.0. And then I became Roland 5.0 and they liked him more. And then 16.0. And my point was I started not wanting to be Roland. I wanted to be Roland 16.0 because more doors were open for him. More women liked him. More men liked him. And the challenge was though, this was when my sex addiction got wildly out of control because I had dehumanized myself so much that it opened the door to being able to dehumanize others, which include women who were not my wife, right? So my wife was still a human, but I was able to dehumanize all these other women. So I could pay them for sex. I could use them and pretend that I cared about them until I got what I needed, right? It opened the door to stuff that I would have never been able to do when I was because I remember in my early 20s, I was like, oh, I never cheat. I remember one of my friends was a cheater and I hated that he did it. And then fast forward, here I am, Roland 16.0. He cheats all the time. He could care less about monogamy. All he wants to have is novel experiences and enhance his status. And so whatever he needs to do that. So that's, I think, the reason I wanted to bring that up is I think most successful men can resonate with some ray of that story was, what happens when you fall in love, because that's the challenge, Candice, with this world that we live in is, and this is what I'm about to say is very real. Like the truth is, if you have money and a six pack and dress all nice, like unfortunately our world has, bought into the fact that does make you bet, it does give you some credit for, but what you have to start to understand is that real or not? And I know a lot of guys are like, yeah, it's real. Like, I don't want no one to not like me. And I think, Candice, that's the challenge is what happens if I fall in love with a part because it gives me everything that I've ever wanted. Like, I think that's why when guys get caught, at least guys in my cohort that get caught, it's like so devastating because it's like, oh my gosh, my wife and her therapist, my therapist, are now asking me to like undo so many of these things that I've done to get here. And it's quite threatening because it's like, do I even want to be in this relationship if I'm going to have to strip away all of these things that got me to this point? Can you speak to that? Because it's tough. I mean, I really wanted to be Roland 16.0. I did not want to be Roland 1.0.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just say that what we see oftentimes, and we've seen it more this year than ever. And so we are actually presenting at ITAP,
Yeah.
the International Institute of Trauma.
I'll see you there 2 months from now.
Yeah. So I'll be there, and we're presenting on the dark triad, which is what you're speaking to, which men in society and women as well, all genders actually. What's being really promoted and has for years are dark triad traits: narcissists, Machiavellians. Machiavellians are all I like to just mess with you for pleasure. I like to take, okay. And then psychopathy. I care about me more than you. And there's low levels. So what we find with a lot of men specifically that we work with that are similar to your population is that they grow up in these homes where they're either given a false sense of importance by their mom, who has traits of narcissism, so they become an extension of her. Or the opposite could happen, where there's a lot of chaos and abuse and trauma. And so they have these parts that form early on to cope. I mean, those are fierce protectors. They do politics. They do incredibly well in politics, and they do incredibly well in business. Okay. But personally, they seriously traumatize their partner and family. They wreak havoc, right? And oftentimes we can even see where they're doing things that have a flavor of DARVO, which is deny, attack, reverse victim offender, where there's a lot of like manipulation and abuse, like emotional abuse. So I just want to speak to that for those listening, I like to tell people that oftentimes we know with the people we work with, those are traits, those are parts. And some people will say, well, how do you know they're not like a real psychopath or sociopath? And my response is, when someone is truly a psychopath or sociopath, they blow out of our space at our center. They won't last. We get the FU and they're gone. And so,
and they probably won't even come in the first place.
They'll come, but they really struggle with, I mean, it doesn't matter how gentle we are. I mean, they're gone. So,
Yeah.
So I just first want to speak to that when you were saying like there are a lot of clients, and those clients that are listening, like I want folks to know that these are coping skills. Truly, it's like, and oftentimes it's outdated coping. And so to reassure these men that are like, I want to be 16.0, right? I don't want to be the 1.0. We would do work with that with a person, like, let's say it's you, Roland. I would do work with you to befriend this part of you that loves being 16.0, and then have you really acknowledge and appreciate what it's done for you. Because again, all parts are welcome. Why? Because they're well-intended, even if they have serious outdated coping that is causing damage and harm. Again, why is that? Because they are often a lot younger and they have no idea what is happening today. So for a lot of men that have, that Machiavellian, or they show up and I want to be 16.0 because it got me this and it got me that, and I just love it so much and it feels so good. It's like, okay, well, what is this part of you afraid would happen if you didn't and couldn't do or be that anymore? And so I'll ask you that. What are you afraid would happen if you couldn't be 16.0, Roland?
I can answer that. I was shy. I got excluded and I wasn't invited to things. I was seen as poor. My family is poor, right? And 16.0, he's not poor. And so, I was uninvited. I was an outsider. I was unnoticed. I was often misunderstood. I did not have a voice, and people spoke for me. And that's my impression of 1.0. So 16.0 was the exact opposite. I had a loud voice. I had a resume that was impenetrable. You could not, any corner of my resume you look at, it's like, what? Come at me, try and find something wrong with me, right? I dare you, right? And so I built somebody who had everything for everyone too. Because to your point, bodybuilding was fine, but there's people who are like, that's weird. So it was like, okay, well, how do I impress that person? And so that's why I kept going and going, was how do I create a way of being where, then I start a nonprofit and, donate, now look how philanthropic I am, right? So it's just one thing after another. So, but to the end, it was being dismissed, unheard, unseen, forgotten, belittled, almost treating like, almost forgotten that I even was in the room.
Okay. So let's pause. This is another IFS, right? Let's pause for a minute and just slow things down, because what you're saying again is so important. And so I have so much compassion for the 1.0 Roland. Shy, excluded, poor, no voice. People spoke for you. Dismissed, unheard, unseen, and forgotten. Right? Of course, there would be a 16.0 that would say, hey, I got you, 1.0. That makes so much sense to me. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
So of course, so that's like a tiny dose of IFS right there, where it's like, of course you'd have this part show up to be like, hey buddy, I got you. I'm going to be your voice. I'm going to give you choice. I'm going to make sure that you are absolutely seen, heard, remembered for a lifetime. Right? Yeah. Yeah. And so just for those, again, for you and those individuals listening, it's like that is where it's not about killing off 16.0. It's about just seeing, does this part like its job? Because so often the parts are exhausted. And so sometimes they want a little vacation. Sometimes they don't want to be working 24/7. Sometimes the 16.0 might be like, I love it, but when I come home, I just kind of want to be off. And so it's like, okay, so just check in. What is this part of you needing from you, Roland? Right? And this part might be like a break. When you get home, you want to play with the kids and the dogs and be present to your wife, not be like, hi, watch me. I am Roland 16.0. Right? And so what we see with those parts is like, gosh, thank you so much for all you do. What if you dialed it back a little so that instead of being on 24/7, maybe you're on from like 9 to 5.
Yeah, it's what you're saying is I met a guy who was trained in IFS. I did not know he was, later, now that I'm in this space and I'm trying to help people, I would come to find out what he did to me. But what we did, and it was huge. I wish I would have brought up, I did what most guys did. I concealed my sex addiction from him because I was arrested when I was 14 because of my sex addiction. And so for me, after that experience, I wasn't going to tell a soul because I was under the impression, the police and the state gave me the impression that I was a freak. So I didn't want to talk about this because I thought there was nothing I could do about it. It wasn't until later that I found out. But my point was, when I was working with him, what we started to do, Candice, was it was like, okay, I see it almost as like a gearbox in a car, right? So this car had, 18 gears, and it was like, what gear does this need? And so really what him and I started working was, as I started becoming familiar with the parts, it was like, well, let's just use them for what they're good at. Right. And so then because to your point, do I need to be 16.0 all the time? No, because 16.0 cheats on my wife. I know that. And so what I have to be careful of is, all right, when the keynote speech is done, as much as I used to like to keep them on, because you know why? Because then you've keynote speak before, you get off stage and now you got all the people, they want pictures with you. And so I used to keep them on because I was like, oh, let's drink that up. But now I don't want to be a guy who's objectifying the people I'm there to serve. So I talked to him, I said, hey, you take the stage. And then when we come off stage, let's be one more bum on the bus, because that's actually what people want. People want to interact with somebody who just delivered a killer keynote, who's actually a normal person. And so that's how I started selling all these parts on, like, hey, if we really want to make the impact that you want to make, let's come on stage and dominate the room, because you're so good at that and you're going to get maximum attention. And then when we get off, let's put that to rest, and let's show these people that we're actually not better than them. Let's show them that we are, if anything, know exactly the pain that they're struggling with, right? And so I was just trying to share that example with guys. Like, in no way are Candice and I trying to kill off your skill set. We just want to make sure that you turn it off, because the problem is, and guys do this, they go on a conference and it's like, I am here, I'm going to meet everyone I need to meet, I'm going to get all these phone numbers, I'm going to get all these opportunities. And they shift that gear on and they're like, I'm going to turn that on Thursday. I'm not going to turn it off until I get back home on Monday. Problem is, that guy is now out drinking about a bunch of women. He is now. And so the challenge is, guys often wonder, oh, I felt like my brain was hijacked. Well, it was, you basically said, hey, I'm going to go to this event and I'm going to be this. And yeah, that guy doesn't have the same values that you had. So when he was there, he was single and he was doing everything that he could to get ahead. And he did a great job at that. And now you have something to disclose to your wife when you get home, because you made a mistake, right? And so I hopefully I explained that well, but I wanted to show these guys, like, in no way are we asking you to kill these off. We're just starting. Like I said, I envision it as like a 16 gear car. It's like, I'm going to use gear 3 for this, and I'm going to go to 7th gear for this. And then, I'm intentional. I call it intentional living. I mean, it's just, I'm using the most strategically advantageous part for the population in front of me, so that I can not dishonor my own morals and values, and also not harm them in the process. And it's just getting slowly better at choosing the most appropriate part. And if you guys think you can't do this, that's BS. I know you can, because most of you listeners have kids. I promise you, you do not talk to your son and daughter the same way that you talk to your employees or your business partners. Like, I know you don't. And that's an example of, why would I use this part over here when my daughter doesn't care about my ability to make money? She could care. She's 5 years old. She could care less. Right. So why would I bring that up? Is that an accurate description of kind of using your parts strategically?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'll say that parts get to have consent as to what because they're forced into their roles at a very young age. Parts are forced into their roles. And so it's not about necessarily selling them on anything. It's not using them. It's really building a self-to-part relationship, so that the 16.0 part trusts you enough to say, oh, Roland's here. Wow. Wait, Roland can handle this? I can dial it back. I can sit and like watch him lead. Wait, he's going to lead the way that I've loved leading, but without all the ways that have caused pain. Okay, I'd like to have him do that. That's more what we're going after.
Yeah. So here's how I'll speak to that. I've gotten there now, but if we rewind back when I first started doing this work, it was a very disjointed process. Now I do feel more of a harmonious, now that I've been doing this for so long, because I pretty much have done I've done some somatic experience, but I would say 80% of my work through recovery has been IFS. It's been the bulk of it. And I think doing it enough now, it's more of a harmony, a symphony. They're aware of each other. We starting to realize, because they're all trying to like have this go well, they are starting to realize, it's like that Inside Out movie, right? Like, it's like anxiety's like, hey, let me take care of it. And then, right. And it's like, they start to get to use to each other. It's like, well, how about actually you do this? Because every time I do it, I screw it up. And so that's, I think, advanced. Eventually you get to this point where them so well that there's this, it's harmonious. But yeah, in the beginning, it was very much like, I had to it was not quite like that. Let me just say that. It was very janky in the beginning.
Well, and I mean, it's definitely a learning curve. If you think about kind of historically how recovery in any sense looks, it's very cognitive based, cognitive behavioral therapy, and this is not. This is very experiential. It's very like connecting to your body. It is kind of, it's, some people might say it's woo-woo even, right? But every single person I've worked with, no matter what their neurology is, no matter where, how they show up to see me, no matter what country they're in and come from, they understand it. Now, sometimes, depending on their developmental level, we have to get creative, right? But there is a way as an IFS therapist that we can, just by doing IFS, that we can really help get into someone's system. So it's not about talking about the parts as much as it is you connecting in the therapy session with your parts. And sometimes we use what's called direct access because people struggle with that. They struggle, a part of me, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. But then I'll just say to you, if I see that there's a part here, what are you hoping to do when you are like chasing women? Or what are you hoping to do when you're taking steroids? What are you concerned will happen, right? And that when we ask that, it lets us know that there's an exile. You let us know. You let the listeners and myself know there's this really little wounded boy that shy, excluded, all this stuff. And he would be the goal is to tend to the protectors of that part so they trust you enough and me enough eventually to be able to connect with that little exiled boy, that part of you, to help him heal.
I love that you articulated that so well. That was such a great job. And I hope the audience listened to that too, is I think where this seems intimidating to a lot of people is they're like, yeah, I don't know what a part is. Or they'll hear scary words like narcissist. And again, I hope you really hear what, Candice said it when she was kind of introducing that concept. These things are all spectrums. All of them, everything. I think everything in life is spectrum. I personally don't believe anyone is straight or gay. I think everyone is gayish and straightish. I think everything in life is on some degree of a spectrum. I don't think anyone is a pure anything. So, I hope you hear what she's saying in terms of, in no way are we calling you anything. I want to speak to this, and I want to have you speak back to it, like from a narcissistic standpoint. I've been called that before. No doubt. I was called it by my parents growing up in high school. I've been called it by adults. I've never been called it by a therapist. Therapists know better than to call me that. But I've been called that ish before. And I think where I grew to kind of embrace it and use it and listen to it was when I had someone explain to me like what narcissistic tendency, like traits, how they happen. Like I did not trust my parents. By 8 years old, I trusted them to feed me, and that was it. I did not trust them to see me, hear me, listen to me. Frankly, the advice they gave me, I was a pretty smart kid. Like the advice they gave me, I was like, nah, like I'm going to be like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to go to college there. I don't want to do anything of what you're saying. And so I became very narcissistic when it came to my future and how I'm going to use my time. I became very narcissistic when it came to how I was going to be seen and how I was going to choose to go do that. And so essentially, because I didn't trust them to do anything besides feed me, I was going to get love. I was going to get sex. I was going to get fulfillment. So I just want to share that to the listeners. When someone calls you a narcissist or claims that you have narcissistic tendencies, or maybe even your therapist has kind of broached the idea, I just want you guys to hear, like, I am not a narcissist. However, I am very much aware that I trust no one but myself to get my needs met in a ton of categories, which I don't know if you kind of look up the definition, they're not too dissimilar. Can you speak to that piece for the people listening? Because I think that is kind of a barrier to entry, is like, oh, am I going to go see Candice and she's just going to diagnose me with all of these like really serious issues that I don't want to see, and I certainly don't want my wife to come to this appointment and my wife to see, because this is going to be, can you speak to how it's not as scary as everyone's making it out to be?
Yeah, it's not. I want to say I've been called a narcissist as well. So I think, again, like sometimes those terms are just thrown around, right? And the reality is that people that come to us actually, as they map they're in come to that sometimes. Now, if we name it based on what they're describing, we might say, but you actually name your own parts. We don't name your parts. Now we might say, if we're hearing it and it's consistent and partner in the room, and it's like, okay, there's definitely a part here that showed up in this way. We'll use that term because even saying narcissistic part, if it's like what you're trying to be a narcissistic part, to me, that's disarming versus you're a narcissist, Roland.
Right.
Right. Like you can hear me go, oh, I'm curious. I'm curious if you feel like that may be a narcissistic part of you. Now, remember, for folks that are listening, those are protectors of a very wounded part or parts. That really is what's happening. And so if I as a therapist can help the client in front of me to befriend the part that is protecting that sweet little exile, then that part will soften back and can do some beautiful, like mind-blowing work to heal that part that they're protecting. And then what we see with the quote narcissistic part is those behaviors actually soften.
Yeah, you're reminding me of an intensive that I went to. It was when I finally, and this was hard for me, I didn't realize how much I hated Roland 1.0. I knew, like I had therapists tell me that how scared they were of how much I hated them. I didn't really understand that. It was so, I developed Roland 2.0 when I was like 8. So like it's been so long, decades upon decades before, like I killed him off and called him names so long ago that I'm just kind of, it's like the telephone game. All I know is that 1.0 told, 2.0 told 3.0 that he hates him, and 3.0 to 4.0 that he hates him. And now here I am at 16.0, and I don't even know who he is. It's been so long, but all I know is 15.0 said that everybody has hated him up to this point, right? So, but Candice, you reminded me of an intensive that I was at, and you know what? I had my eyes closed. We were doing this exercise where my parents were hypothetically sitting in front of me, right? And I was at this intensive, and all these other people were at the intensive, which, by the way, everybody listening, if you are in recovery, you need to be going to, I shouldn't say need, I would highly suggest that you are going to routinely, I don't care how deep you are in your recovery, I would put at least one intensive on your calendar every year, if not 2. Trust me, it's a smart move for so many reasons. But anyways, I'm at this intensive, and you're reminding me, Ken, I was sitting there, and the therapist was guiding me, and he was asking me, it was coming to an end, and he asked me a question. And this is the first time I've ever said this. It was so beautiful. I said, man, that kid's a stud. Like what a baller to understand at 8 that his parents, because of their that we had a very strict faith that they subscribed to, because of the roadmap and what they were going to force me to do, my design knew, Roland, you are going to be unfulfilled going down that path. And so I was like, wow, good for him. So I'm saying this to the listeners, like, while my narcissistic tendencies I was ashamed of for so long, now I'm not ashamed of them. I still kind of want them out of my life. But at the same time, I also am actually very impressed with how narcissistic I got, how young, because it was like, wow, he recognized this ain't going to work for us. Now, did he choose the best way to do it? No. But I mean, at 8, what option did he have? I mean, it was the church, and I hated them. They hated me. I couldn't do it at home. So like, what option did I have? I had to do it myself. So I just wanted to tell that short story because this is what Candice is talking about, is this is how you, in my opinion, how you get past your narcissistic stuff that you have to get past is I started recognizing, oh, I see why it was there. It was brilliant. Honestly, it was genius, right? It's genius psychology. Whoever designed us humans, it was brilliant to be able to give us the ability. And I'm also a full grown man who doesn't live with my parents anymore. Right. And so that's where now I have to be like, okay, do we tone some of that stuff down? Like, do we trust the universe now to take care of us? Because there's a lot of evidence that it's actually going to probably go well now. But that was not my mindset back then. So I think that was a really good example of parts, right?
No, it was. I mean, I just, well, and I want to say that how to your 8-year-old part, like I really just appreciate how resourceful that part was to try and keep you safe. Right. And so, and if that part learns to trust you, that part that feels like it has to show up in these ways that look like the label of narcissist, if that part trusts that you're here, this part is safe with you, you are its home, then it might be like willing to soften and let you lead, right? It takes time.
And that's how this works. That's like, that's actually, so like, as I've been doing this, that is, they do come off it. And it comes, and I just want everybody listening to it, comes off in different ways. Sometimes I'm selling them on letting go. Sometimes they are not really being sold, but some of them back down. Some of them are like, oh, no. Like, I don't want to do that. I've just done that because I had to do it that way. But if you're going to do it that way and there'll be no negative consequence and no shame, then you do it. So I just want you guys to understand, like, as you're doing this, your parts will have different reactions. I have some that are like, F you, stay away. I hate therapists. And those have been the harder parts, is like, they don't want help. And and so I've had to be creative. I've had to use plant medicines and different. So I just want to show, and Candice, by the way, listeners, I'm going to have her kind of speak to this, but Candice has a killer reputation. She is definitely probably, I'm going to ask her to, she's not going to brag as much as she should, but she has a really outstanding reputation. I mean, Candice, what you have built in this very busy, crowded space to become as known and trusted as you have, it's such an accomplishment. So I want to really say that that's not easy to do in this space. It's as you know, the therapy space is the Wild West. I mean, it is just like, I have to usually see 14 therapists to find one that's right. And so to have such a trusted reputation, I just want to say that's a huge accomplishment. So on that note, if these people are going to find you, come out to an intensive, where are you located? How does this work? What's the website? Talk to us about how the different offerings work.
Sure. So people can look up namasteadvice.com. And if you post anything, perhaps you can post that. We often do 5 days. I had a colleague in Oregon that refers a lot to us that said 5 days at Namaste is like a year of regular treatment. Yeah. And so because we are such an accurate approach for people's systems and recovery, it is pretty mind blowing. So really that's what it looks like. We use IFS primarily. We incorporate breath work. We do somatic IFS. And then sometimes if people want, we'll do a ketamine assisted psychotherapy intensive. And that, talk about accelerating people's recovery, because what happens is people's protectors after ketamine. So it's literally an hour of ketamine and then 2 hours of integration. But when you're at a 5-day intensive with us, it's for like 2 to 3 days in the morning of ketamine, and then you're integrating. But the protectors soften back. Yeah. And so if you were to come and do it, for instance, chances are 16.0 would soften back and then allow us to really do some beautiful work with that shy, sweet little part.
Yeah, I love that.
And then with couples, the intensives we do, amazing, because we map the parts, both of their systems parts on the board, and that's pretty eye-opening. And then when we use IFIO, which is my favorite model in the entire universe, it's incredible the change that we see in couples like that.
I love it. It's and I think what I would say, just for everybody listening, is This approach is for, especially for the high achievers listening, this is measured, it's systematic. There's lots of practice put into this. So in no way is Candice just winging this. Like this is as scientific as psychology can get, which is really hard sometimes. So Candice, this was so awesome. I'm going to put the link in the show notes for everybody who wants to reach out to you, but I so appreciate this and I hope we do it again.
Thanks so much. Thank you.